thanks for having me this morning. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you in person. So I'm Fiona Daly. I'm the National Sustainability and Workforce Lead at NHS England and NHS Improvement, and I'm just going to give you a quick whistle-stop tour about some of the core things that are happening centrally and across the system in terms of net zero carbon over the next few years. I'm not going to be with you at the end of the presentation, so if any of you do have any questions that you want to pose to me, you can either do those directly, my details will be at the end of the presentation, or you can give them to the Nolex team and we'll make sure that all of the questions are answered after the conference has completed. So hopefully it won't be a surprise to you to know that the UK is going net zero. There has been a lot of commitments over the last few years. The UK government committed to be net zero by 2050, and they were the first major economy to do so. There's been a number of pieces of legislation coming down the line, guidance, recovery from COVID, being Build Back Better and Build Back Greener. There's the 10-point green revolution, the green industrial revolution, which is looking to improve green jobs across the sector. And later on this year, in fact in November, there's the Conference of Parties, which is the international conference of parties of all of the countries coming together to decide what happens over the next few years in terms of climate change. And that's actually being hosted in Glasgow this year, so a really pinnacle year for the UK in terms of carbon emissions. And in the NHS, we've been taking it very seriously. You will have seen probably in October last year, we published our Delivering a Net Zero National Health Service report. You can find that on the NHS England website if you haven't seen it. And that sets out our trajectory to net zero by 2045, which is just ahead of the government's targets of 2050. And why do we think that it's important for the NHS to do that? Well, that's quite easy, really. Climate change is the biggest and most pressing challenge of our generation. And the world's best scientists say that we've got less than 10 years to fix it. The NHS itself is responsible for a lot of emissions, 5% of the UK emissions, and we make up over a third of all public sector energy emissions. So we've got a massive amount that we can do, especially in terms of our building energy. Our estate is colossal, as you know. We have 25 million square metres of hospital estate, a further 7,500 primary care facilities and 11,000 community pharmacies. And all of that itself presents challenges to how we get all of those buildings to zero carbon. In putting the report together, the NHS pulled together its carbon footprint. So this basically sets out our baseline for what we're going at in terms of emission reduction, and we split it into two parts. So the pie diagram on the left-hand side, you can see we've got the NHS carbon footprint, which is in green, and that's everything that we have direct control over. So our building, water, waste, staff travel, anaesthetic gases. And then the bit in blue we've called the carbon footprint plus. And that's stuff that we can influence. So that's basically our supply chain, our construction, our medical equipment, our medicines and chemicals that we buy, and all the other services that we procure in the NHS. So a huge amount to do in the supply chain sector. And on the right-hand side, you've got the intensity of all of the carbon intensity of all of those areas. And as you can see, I've kind of put a ring around the estates and facilities focus one. So we cut across a huge amount of the NHS carbon footprint from the things that you would expect, like building energy, water and waste, into things like construction, business services, food and catering. So huge, huge influence and impact that we can have by focusing on the NHS estate itself. You may also have seen that last week our Trust Board endorsed and put out our commitments in terms of our supply chain. So we've been very clear that by the end of the decade, all of our supply chain will be coming along this journey with us. And there are certain things that we need everybody to do along the way. Just one thing really to note here, and these slides will be circulated so you can take a more detailed look later on. But in January next year, we're going to be launching our Sustainable Supplier Framework, and that will really set out the expectation for our suppliers over the next decade to ensure that we remain on the trajectory for the supply chain for 2045. So our main focus really in estates and facilities is around the estate itself, so the buildings and the built environment, and the services that we provide. And why do we focus on buildings? Well, there's a number of reasons, really. Clearly, it's an obvious place to start. You know, our buildings are a huge amount of physical manifestations within our organisations. They are something that we know broadly what to do already. We've got a really clear plan, and that will be coming out later on this month, which will detail exactly what you need to do to get those buildings to zero carbon. We're ahead of the game. A lot of this stuff is happening in your organisations. You're doing great work, and what we need to do now is to scale some of that work across the ICSs and across the regions. A lot of the time it makes great business sense, good revenue savings, savings on energy, and you will all have seen the energy rises recently, and I'm sure will have pinched your budgets a little bit, or will over the next sort of 6 to 12 months. So really formally making the business case. That will also be increased by the increasing amount of carbon taxes that we'll see over the coming years. As the NHS, we also want to set the standard, and I think that this is really important. In estates and facilities, we do a lot to set the standard. We have one of the best set of technical standards. We really look to lead the way in a lot of areas, and net zero is certainly not one of them that we're shying away from. So we want to set the standard. We want to drive, as well as physical benefits from the built environment, we also want to provide social value and health benefits, and we can do that in terms of job creation and green jobs. And in fact, this week we're launching the first cohort of net zero carbon apprentices. They're energy managers. There's going to be 10 of them working across the country, and we hope that that will be an annual cohort that we'll build on year. And I think that that's just a small part of the job creation that we can push going forward. So how are we looking at our estate? Well, we're looking at our estate in terms of 3 core areas. So the first is planning. Clearly, plans are important. We're building 48 new hospitals. We've got a tranche of primary care facilities which are coming down the line, and we needed to put some standards around those. So in November this year, we'll be launching the Net Zero Carbon Healthcare Standard. Thank you to everybody who's been involved in that so far. It's been 9 months in the making. We've had extensive amount of consultation and input from everybody. But this is really important. We need to make sure that what we're building now, which will still be here in 2050, is going to be as close to zero as we can get it. Obviously, we need to continue to invest in the retained estate. That's going to be a majority of our estate. These new buildings are wonderful, but they are a small proportion of our estate, and most of the estate that we have will remain in 2050. So things like the public sector decarbonisation scheme, which has this week opened its third round of funding. So please all have a look at that and apply for that. We got £260 million for the NHS last time, but we had 640 million of applications. So there's still a lot of projects which were unfunded, which could go through into this round. We've rolled out £50 million of LED lighting, and thank you to everybody who applied and installed all of your lighting through the NEEF programme. And as organisations, you're investing about £75 million a year in your operational capital to drive forward net zero. We're looking at how we increase that, and one of the ways that we're going to do that is by doing a piece of work to link backlog maintenance risk and net zero benefits. So basically a single pound spent, which would have dual benefits. We've put a bid into this year's spending review, and we're awaiting the outcome of that, which we should know in the next sort of couple of months. But most importantly here, we're looking at providing guidance for the ICS estate strategies. So each of your ICSs will be pulling together an estate strategy, and we'll be providing guidance for that. And net zero will be one of the core things that we focus on in those strategies. Again, as I said earlier, we're going to be launching our delivery plan. That's coming out later this month. There's a national webinar on the 28th of this month. So anybody who's interested in attending that, please reach out to our team and we'll get you registered for that. The second thing that we're looking at is around data and digitalisation. So I'm sure by now that our team is very focused on data and the quality of data. And this is really important to us. So now we've got the quality of data, we're now looking for the timeliness of data. So we're looking at linking up the half-hourly meters, improving the spread of smart meters, especially across the GP estate, so that we can get more real-time data from our healthcare facilities. At the same time, we're also looking at things that could help to drive efficiencies. We've done some trials in artificial intelligence, and again, the case study for that will be published shortly. Really interesting case study around how AI can help us to drive efficiencies and improve our energy management. And some of you, I think, are already using the HiSopt software that again looks at AI applications on your M&E services. And looking at where you can make efficiencies there. So definitely worth a look at that. We're also looking at launching our net zero carbon investment tool. So that's the capital planning tool for zero carbon. That will tell you pretty much what you need to invest at each of your sites to get to zero carbon. And that should help conversations with your finance managers and finance directors to ensure that you get the support that you need over the coming years. And that will all hopefully culminate in some kind of digital twin for the NHS, where we create some kind of digital copy of our buildings, where all of the data can flow in together and people can see it tangibly and understand it. So that's kind of the end game for us. But over the next few years, we're going to be looking at improving the timeliness of data, getting more real-time data, and putting out some tools to help you to drive efficiencies, especially in terms of AI. And then the third thing that we're really focused on is our workforce. The workforce is a huge opportunity for us. We've got 1.3 million staff working across the NHS. Almost all of them are categorically saying that we need change for climate change. We need to address it as an organisation. We need to address it. And in estates and facilities, we've got nearly 100,000 staff working across the system, many of who are working in the engineering fields, and really importantly, front of house. They are the people who can really drive change. They can be at the front of the change that we want to see. So we're going to be working over the next few years to improve carbon literacy, to offer training, to offer upskilling. There's going to be a huge opportunity in the teams over the next few years for these kind of skills. So anybody who's looking at developing themselves, I would really recommend you check out the apprenticeship schemes, which you can do at any level. You don't have to be entry level to do an apprenticeship if you want to improve your development skills. This is a huge area for us, both in terms of the fact that we need to upskill our workforce. We need to put the tools in place to enable people to be able to drive this forward. But you guys are going to be delivering this stuff. So we really need carbon literacy to be widely understood across the sector. We also know that net zero is a core for attracting the best talent in today's kind of recruitment space. So people are looking for socially and environmentally conscious organisations to work for. So again, this will be really important in terms of the workforce development over the next few years. I just put in a couple of examples that I thought you might find interesting around what this actually means in reality. So because sometimes it can be a little bit ethereal and out there. So we talk about the fact that we can drive efficiency, that it makes good business sense, but what does that actually mean? So when our delivery plan comes out, you'll see that we've developed a very simple 4-step plan for decarbonisation. And we've looked at 9 quick win, no regret measures, and they really are very good. So not only do they do require funding, but not only do they pay back in less than 4 years, they take out a quarter of our carbon emissions. They have a significant impact on our backlog maintenance risk, and they also improve the patient environment. We know that LED lighting improves the patient environment. We know that improving our ventilation systems, especially post-COVID, will improve the patient environment as well. And we know that if we embrace digitalization, digital technologies, that can also improve the patient and staff experience. So all of those things, really, really important, really easy to do. They are not complicated, but they do require some focus. They require some focused capital investment. So I would really just urge you to read the plan when it comes out. Take a look at what you can do in your organisations, and let us know if there's anything that we can do to help. The second is around the impact of digital technology. So I talked about a trial that we did with AI technologies. That was with something called Emma. Emma is an AI energy manager. And basically, Emma takes data from buildings, has a look at them, and identifies things that are outside the normal. So the AI itself learns your buildings, it learns the rhythms of your buildings, the energy use profiles of your buildings, and then it identifies where things are kind of out of sync. It links that sort of error up with the engineer, and then the engineer goes along and has a look. And then by learning, it learns by the engineer will put in whatever they use to fix it. And then that will be learnt that is the likely thing that you need to do the next time that happens. By doing that, we identified a whole bunch of stuff, some of which is around the need for better digital skills in estates and facilities. And you'll see that the workforce team have been working to put out free or funded digital skills training, which is available. You can find details of that on the hub. But we also identified that we could save a whole load of carbon. So 10,000 tonnes, which is about equivalent to 3.8 million pounds of energy savings a year. So we're now looking to take the lessons learned, try and address some of the issues that we found within the estate, and then focus on scaling that across some ICSs and regions. So again, if anybody is interested in being a part of that, please reach out and let us know. We know that this kind of technology will increase and improve over the next few years, and we really believe that it can help our energy managers on the ground at their organisations to drive forward the net zero carbon goals. And then finally, just on the standards, I touched briefly on the standards earlier, but we've been developing the standard for about 9 months. You can see how it fits in with the rest of the kind of sustainability and wellbeing agenda. The standard itself is this bit in dark blue down here, and it looks to address basically REBA stages, mainly 2 to 4, and then we have some advice and guidance for stages 5 onwards. It assumes you've already done the early SOC strategic questioning, so where is the site going to be? But there is some early advice available through the Net Zero Carbon Client Brief, which we put out. But importantly, some of the things that it doesn't cover, so we're not looking to cover things like adaptation or wellness, so it doesn't reflect things like the well building standard. It is purely focused on achieving zero carbon. However, we have tried to make it as comprehensive as possible, and we've signposted where organisations should be looking at other guidance to ensure that the buildings are resilient for the future. As I said, it's out for consultation at the moment, and that consultation closes on the 24th of this month, and it's due out on the 24th of November, so 24th of next month formally. So keep an eye out for that. As I said, if you have any questions, if you want to know anything or any clarifications, please drop me a line. Here are all of my details, and I hope you found that interesting. Thanks very much.